What's good, everybody? It's the Clown with Cap show. UFC 309 was so iconic. Shout out to the GOAT, Jon Jones. He's by far the GOAT, and I can't wait, man. Everybody's hyping up Tom Aspinall. Yes, he's a great heavyweight. He is beatable, and I think Jon Jones, the recipe to beat Tom Aspinall when they fight, probably around summertime, International Fight Week, somewhere around that time. I think it's going to be one of the biggest fights in UFC history. It could surpass Conor McGregor versus Khabib at UFC 229. So I can't wait, man. I really can't. But the recipe to beat Tom is to take him down and utilize his ground and pound. And we saw what Jon Jones did to Stipe. Round one took him down. Jon Jones did his classic Johnny Bones Jones, throwing his elbows, classic elbows, ended up cutting Stipe. Then come to third round, we saw Jon Jones utilize his leg kicks to the body of Stipe and eventually throw that crazy kick to the body, which ended up Stipe getting knocked out, TKO'd. Shout out to Jon Jones, man. He just made it look easy. He dominated every second of the fight. Yes, Stipe had some good shots here and there overall, but come on, bro. Like, you really think Jon Jones is going to lose to Tom Aspinall? And I get it. Now, I would say, yes, Tom Aspinall right now is younger. He is probably quicker on his feet, and I do think Jon Jones needs to work on that. When he does fight Tom Aspinall, just be a little quicker on his feet. I do think Jon Jones was kind of just not as quick as I thought Jon Jones would be, to be honest with you. But if he does match up against Aspinall, I think that's how the fight's going to go. I think Jon Jones is going to utilize his leg kicks against Tom Aspinall. He's going to go to the body against Tom Aspinall, and he's eventually going to shoot for takedowns against Tom Aspinall. The only recipe for Tom Aspinall beating Jon Jones is by knocking Jon Jones out. And we've never seen Jon Jones stunned in the octagon. We never see him get phased in the octagon. So it's just like, well, it's like the GOAT versus the best heavyweight right now. So I can't wait for that fight. I know Dana White and Hunter, they're going to schedule that fight. Eventually, that fight's going to happen, and I love Jon Jones, man. He's just riding with the media right now. Everybody's calling Jon Jones a dog. He's not this, he's not that, but it's so funny, right, when they call him a dog, but yet Jon Jones still is dominating every single opponent he's fought. And I understand there's some opponents where it was close, like Gustafsson, one fight. He ended up beating him in the second fight, knocking him out. Dominic Reyes was probably the closest fight for Jon Jones, and that was kind of like Jon Jones' I think last fight at light heavyweight, and that was the Jon Jones where we're like, oh wow, he is human. Jon Jones is human, but Jon Jones flipped the script and said, hey, I run UFC. I'm pound for pound king. And if you give me the right bag, Dana White and Hunter Campbell, I'm going to run with it. And I am going to fight Tom Aspinall next year. So I think that fight is going to happen. I think it's going to be one of the biggest pay-per-view events in UFC history. Tom Aspinall versus Jon Jones. I cannot wait. This is going to be epic, man. Shout out to Jon Jones, the GOAT. Getting the third round TKO victory against Stipe at UFC 309, man. Just like how I predicted it. I said either by knockout or submission, Jon Jones. Jon Jones is the GOAT. Take off, Jon. Let's go! And then we got Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler. This was a great fight. Mostly Charles Oliveira dominated this fight, though. From start to finish, and I get the fifth round. I will give to Michael Chandler. He had a great moment in the fifth round. Looked like he could have finished Charles Oliveira just like he did in the first fight, but it just didn't happen. Charles Oliveira found a way. He had more tools in his shed because he's just a better overall fighter than Michael Chandler. But fans in UFC, MMA, people, they love Michael Chandler. He brings the fight. He's exciting. Every single fight is just electric. And we saw, Charles Oliveira utilize the wrestling, which I was really surprised in this fight. I was surprised how easy Charles Oliveira was to take Michael Chandler down. Michael Chandler is a former wrestler. So I just think Michael Chandler was just a little rusty this fight. Just wasn't ready for that. He thought Charles wanted to stand with him. Charles kept taking him down until I think the fifth round. And then eventually got Michael Chandler down with like a minute to go in the fifth round. But it was just a great fight, man. It really was. It was a dominating performance from Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira will get a crack at the belt at 155 again. I can't wait for him to do that. Just the whole story of Charles Oliveira is amazing, man. Being born poor, just really a rough upbringing, just never gave up on Charles Oliveira's dream. Now Charles Oliveira is a former champion, one of the greatest MMA fighters in UFC history. So Charles Oliveira went from nothing to something, man. It was amazing. Just amazing story, amazing journey from Charles Oliveira. But however, Michael Chandler, he's 38 now. What's going to be next for him in the UFC? He's saying he's going to fight 3 or 4 times in 2025. That's what he has scheduled with Dana White in the UFC. So that's going to be great. There's a lot of things Michael Chandler can do. He can fight a rematch with Dustin Poirier for Dustin Poirier's last fight in the UFC. He can fight Conor McGregor still, which he still calls out. That would be an electric fight as well. So there's a lot of opportunities and stuff on the table for Michael Chandler, but the time is ticking. Next year is probably 1-2 years left in the UFC for Michael Chandler, and then he's going to hang him off into the sunset and retire. But he wins the fans over, similar to like a Nate Diaz. Wins the fans over. Even though he's losing fights, he's winning fans over, getting people in the seats. People are buying tickets because of Michael Chandler. He's an exciting fighter. That's what he brings to the table, and that's why Dana White loves Michael Chandler. He brings big business to the UFC, so it's just great, man. But this fight was great. It wasn't the fight of the night. It was kind of boring midway through this fight, but the 5th round was electric. Michael Chandler had his moments. Looked like he was going to knock him out. It really did. It looked like he could have, but I knew Charles had it in the bag after the first 3 rounds. I just knew it, man. You could just tell the difference. You could tell Michael Chandler was just not all there yet. He really wasn't. He's still an exciting fighter, but getting taken down, how easy Michael Chandler got taken down, I was surprised. I was like, there's no way Michael Chandler should be getting taken down this easy against Charles Oliveira. Like, there's no way. Like, please, Michael Chandler, this is not true, but, you know, hats off to Charles Oliveira, man. He's going to get the crack at the 155 belt. I can't wait for that, man. And Michael Chandler will be back, man. He's going to bring butts in those seats, man. I'm telling you, he's just an electric fighter. Shout out to Michael Chandler. Even though he didn't win, what a fight it was. And then shout out to everybody hates on Bo Nickel versus Paul Craig. This fight was somewhat boring, but everybody booed Bo Nickel, and Bo Nickel came out and said, look, man, like, I can't freaking finish every single fighter I fight. In this fight, I mean, we look at Paul Craig and say, wow, he was probably about 20 pounds more than Bo Nickel, about 4 inches taller than Bo Nickel in this fight. And that's why Bo Nickel did not shoot for takedowns, because Paul Craig is an expert at submitting people. He submits people at light heavyweight at 205. Bo Nickel's 185. So Bo Nickel was too smart to say, you know what, I'm going to shoot for takedowns. No, Bo said I'm going to stand with him. And Bo does need to work on a stand-up game, okay? Like, he's fresh in the UFC, man. He's 7-0 right now. Like, he's the new prospect. He's a Khabib 2.0. He really is. Khabib, the same type of fighter Bo Nickel is. Doesn't really have good stand-up, expert at takedowns. It really has a great overhand. You know, same thing as Khabib. Khabib always has that great overhand, and he used it in the McGregor fight. I think in round 2, he nailed McGregor with the overhand right and stunned McGregor. So, like, you know, Bo Nickel still needs to work on a stand-up game to mix it here and there, but everybody hating on Bo Nickel, I don't get it. You know, every single fight this man's been in, he's dominated from start to finish, including this fight. He was just dominating. Yes, Paul Craig hit him a couple times, which we wanted to test out Bo's chin, see what it's about. But I just think Bo needs to continue to work on a stand-up game, and he's going to be elite, and he will fight Chimaev. Now, obviously, he's not ready for Chimaev at this moment, but I would say in a year or 2 down the line, that fight has to happen, and it's going to happen. The UFC knows that's going to happen, and the fans want to see that fight happen. We want to see American wrestling versus, you know, a guy that's like Chimaev, that's straight killer, you know, really a freestyle type of wrestler. So everybody wants to see that fight, and that fight's going to happen. Bo Nickel versus Chimaev, that fight is going to get booked eventually. It's just a matter of time. When is this fight going to happen? When is Dana White and the UFC going to push Bo Nickel to the point where, hey, bro, we want to give you a top 5 fight here. Like, you need to fight guys in the top 5. Put Bo Nickel against somebody great, man. You know, like, that's what you're going to have to do, and Bo Nickel understands that. Bo Nickel, and I bet his team understands, hey, Bo, we're going to have to get better at just stand up. We're just going to have to, man. Like, you know, you got a couple good shots here, but you're going to have to mix it up. Even better at leg kicks as well for Bo Nickel. But Bo Nickel is legit. He's the real deal. And Bo Nickel versus Chimaev in a couple years is going to be arguably probably the biggest fight in UFC history. Besides, you know, obviously John Jones, you know, and Tom Aspinall, that's going to happen, or Alex Pereira, you know, sometime next year. But Bo Nickel just needs to continue to do what he's doing and get better. You know, live like a champion. And that's what Bo does. He lives and trains like a champion, that he eats, sleeps MMA. So, like, dude, Bo is going to get better. His stand-up game is going to get better. And I'd love to see, like, ex-UFC Hall of Famers help Bo out with the stand-up. Somebody, you know, like Masvidal. I'd love to see Masvidal help Bo Nickel stand-up game, because Bo needs to improve that if he wants to beat Chimaev, because that fight is going to be a stand-up war. And obviously, I'm leaning more towards Chimaev right now, but in a couple years down the line, man, I'm telling you, Bo versus Chimaev is going to happen, man. I cannot freaking wait. Disappointing news for 309. Chris Weidman fight ended up getting canceled. His opponent ended up getting hurt or like something happened. I really don't know, but it just sucks for Chris Weidman. But maybe that's God talking to Chris Weidman and saying, hey, bro, like hang him up. You've been in this sport way too long. Even though Jim Miller, shout to Jim Miller, got another victory, man. Jim Miller, he wants to get 50 fights in the UFC, Jim Miller. I mean, Jim Miller won. I think he submitted this guy. Guillotine, shout out to Jim Miller, man. I can't wait to see him fight in 2025. I mean, the man's like 42 years old. Same age as Stipe, which is pretty crazy, right? That's insane. But shout out to Jim Miller, man, and Chris Weidman. But the main event, Jon Jones lived up to all the expectations, lived it all up. And everybody wants to talk crap about Jon Jones and say this or that. You can talk crap, but at the end of the day, the cream rises to the top. Jon Jones is the GOAT, and if Jon Jones does fight Tom Aspinall, that's how he's going to beat Tom Aspinall. Throwing his crazy kicks, keeping distance, and shooting for takedowns. That's how he's going to beat Tom Aspinall. And eventually, he's going to submit Tom Aspinall and still become, what he is right now is the absolutely GOAT. And it's crazy how much the internet and the social media wants to minimize Jon Jones and bring up his past, issues because he brings up Jesus in his octagon. It's just funny how it goes. All the haters for Jon Jones are the same that are hopping on Tom Aspinall's bandwagon saying, oh, he's ducking Tom, he's going to get knocked out. But when this fight actually does happen and when Jon Jones dominates Tom from start to finish, what's the narrative going to be? Oh, this and that. They're going to come up with so many excuses for Jon Jones, or there's so many excuses for Tom Aspinall of why Tom lost the fight against Jon Jones, why this happened, or Tom wasn't 100%, he was battling with the injury. Whatever the excuse is going to be, Jon Jones is going to run through Tom Aspinall, and he's going to win, and he's going to defend his belt successfully yet again. So, Jon Jones is the GOAT. I don't understand why all the Jon Jones haters out there, how can you not label this guy as the GOAT? He's never lost in the octagon, bro. Every single fight Jon Jones has been in, he's won. So, he is the Floyd Mayweather of MMA. He's the Michael Jordan. He is the greatest UFC fighter to ever live. Shout out to Jon Jones, man, the freaking GOAT. All the haters can shut up. It's the Clownwood Cab Show. Let's go!